Thank you. Also assisting the committee is our committee clerk, Sally Schultz. And our committee page, today our committee page is Maggie Massey from Omaha, who is a political science major at UNL. Go ahead and stand up. Thank you for being here. This afternoon, we'll be hearing two bills, and we'll be taking them in the order listed outside the room. On the tables near the entrance, you will find green testifier sheets. If you are planning to testify today, please fill out one and hand it to Sally when you come up. This will help us keep an accurate record of the hearing. Please note that if you wish to have your position listed on the committee statement for a particular bill, you must testify in that position during that bill's hearing. If you do not wish to testify but would like to record your position on a bill, please fill out the white sheet near the entrance. Also, I would note the legislature's policy that all letters for the record must be received via the online comments portal by the committee by noon the weekday prior to the hearing. Any handouts submitted by testifiers will also be included as part of the record as exhibits. We would ask if you do have any handouts that you please bring 12 copies and give them to the page. If you need additional copies, the page can help you make more. Testimony for each bill will begin with the introducer's opening statement. After the opening statement, we will hear from supporters of the bill, then from those in opposition, followed by those speaking in a neutral capacity. The introducer will then be given the opportunity to make closing statements if they wish to do so. We ask that you begin your testimony by giving us your first and last name. Please also spell them for the record. Because the executive board meets over the noon hour and members have other hearings beginning at 1:30, we will be using a 3-minute light system today. When you begin your testimony, the light on the table will turn green. The yellow light is your 1-minute warning. And then when the red light comes on, we will ask you to wrap up your final thoughts. I would remind everyone, including senators, to please turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. With that, we will begin today's hearing on LB 90. Welcome, Senator Dorn.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Senator Breezy, member of the Executive Board. I'm Senator Myron Dorn, M-Y-R-O-N and D-O-R-N, and I represent District 30, and I am the chair of the Performance Audit Committee. I'm here to introduce LB 90, a bill that will amend the Legislative Performance Audit Act to update tax incentive reporting requirements. This bill only affects the reports produced by the Legislative Audit Office and makes no change to any incentive program. I will briefly state what the bill does and answer any questions you have, but staff from the Legislative Audit Office, they're here and they will come up after me and explain why this bill has been brought forward. This bill does two things. First, it eliminates 2 programs from the list of tax incentives that are required to have an audit. Both of these programs the programs themselves have sunset and are no longer taking applications. The other thing the bill does is to update the definition of 2 terms that are used for audit reports: high-tech firms and renewable energy firms. These definitions only affect how tax incentive audits are performed. With that, I will take any questions you have with the understanding that Anthony from the Legislative Audit Office is here and will come up after me to answer any of the more detailed questions that you have. This bill was a bill introduced by Senator Day. She was the vice chairman of the audit committee. So to get it in, I call it in the line of the bills introduced, did that. And since then, there's been coordination with ourselves in the clerk's office, where now I am the person, since I've been chairman, and we have switched this over to, I guess, basically a bill now that I have or whatever. So
Very good, Senator. Thank you for your opening. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator.
thank you.
We'll take the first proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you. Senator Breezy, members of the board, my name is Anthony Circo, A-N-T-H-O-N-Y-C-I-R-C-O, and I'm the Principal Tax Incentive Performance Auditor with the Legislative Audit Office. I'm here to give you additional details on LB 90. In 2015, the legislature approved LB 538, which requires the Legislative Audit Office to audit tax incentive programs. That bill contained 8 incentive programs that were required to have audits performed. Currently, there are 9 incentives listed, and there are bills under consideration this session that may add 1 or 2 more. The first thing this bill does is to remove 2 programs from the list, as Senator Dorn had mentioned. Those are the Advantage Act and the Job Creation and Main Street Revitalization Act, historic tax credits. Again, as Senator Dorn mentioned, both of these programs have sunsets and do not take applications. The audit committee believes the current resources should be dedicated to reviewing programs that are still active so that the results and recommendations can be used by the legislature to change them as they see fit. We are aware that there are bills that have been introduced to reinstate the Main Street program, and Legislative Council already has an amendment drafted to put that back on the list should one of those bills pass. The second thing that this bill does is to change the definitions of high-tech and renewable energy companies. Again, want to state that this would only affect our reporting. This is not a policy change for any incentive programs. And these changes are based on additional research we have done since they were first put into statute. I believe that was 2017. The high-tech definition reflects the changes in the concentration of high-tech employment in the last 5 years. And the renewable energy definition change better focuses the legislature's intent when requiring the office to evaluate these companies. For example, the current definition that's in statute includes strawberry production as a renewable energy activity. The new definition more accurately reflects the actual inputs, production, and associated activity that should be categorized as part of a renewable energy production process. There is another amendment that I believe that Paige handed out that has been drafted, and your legal counsel is also aware of. NAICS code classifications are updated every 5 years. This often includes combining industries under a new number or breaking a sector into smaller sectors. For those of you who are familiar with NAICS codes, they can get pretty complicated if you're looking back. I had accidentally used an older NAICS vintage when drafting the bill. The amendment simply updates some of these codes to their 2022 classifications. And with that, thank you, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions? Senator Vargas.
Thank you for being here. Just questions, because it makes sense why we would not audit them because the legislation ended. And in part I understand the Nebraska Job Creation Main Street Revitalization Act is different because it just ended last session and there's bills to reauthorize it. But for some of these being obviously these being tax credits, even though the legislation is ending, there's no new tax credits being authorized. What about for the existing tax credits that are still out there and the auditing of the programs that are still in existence?
If the Performance Audit Committee wants to, they can authorize another audit on any program that is existing and still putting out credits. For the Nebraska Advantage Act, the Department of Revenue does annual reports on those. And so the major things that you would want to know: outstanding credits, FTEs generated, potential future impacts. Those things, some of those things are reported in the Department of Revenue's annual tax incentive reports. But again, if somebody sees fit to ask the Performance Audit Committee to do an audit of the Advantage Act, even though it's not taking applications, they still have the authority to do that, even if this passes.
Is it typical for us to just remove this off the books from performance audit? I'm also looking at Senator Geist on this as a former chair, just because it's different than just a program on its own, because there's things they're still in existence with it. Is it typical for us to just take it off the books and then not have it being a required component of performance audit?
The angel investment tax credit had previously been on the list and has been taken off since it's been eliminated. So that has happened before. A lot of it is also a resource issue. I am the lead tax incentive performance auditor, but there's typically one audit or two tax incentive audits that we can do in a year. And with the addition potentially of two more, and a limit of, we have to look at each program at least once every 5 years. It's just a bit of a staffing issue as well. We just don't have the time to be able to get in depth on everything.
Tell me you need more staff?
I won't speak for Martha, but I don't think she would disapprove of that.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Anyone else? Senator Geist.
I'll just concur with Anthony. We had a long discussion. Well, it was longish under the balcony, as long as it can B under there, about this issue, and it also being a staffing issue, but since this program is sunsetted for taking additional applications, just removing that responsibility. It doesn't remove, as Anthony said, the capacity for someone to suggest that we take a look from a specific time to another time, the effect this audit is having, or its return on investment, or whatever we would want to look at. It still allows it to be audited. It just doesn't put it in the 5-year rotation that it typically is in. So I think this came out unanimously out of committee, and we agreed with that. So just so you know.
Thank you, Senator Geist. Anyone else? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony, sir.
Thank you.
Next, opponent testifier. Seeing none, any opposition testimony? Seeing none, any neutral testifiers? Seeing none, Senator Dorn waives closing. Thank you, Senator. And we have no letters on that bill, and that will close the hearing on LB 90. With that, we will open the hearing on LB 254. Welcome, Senator Brewer.
All right, we'll see if my voice holds up for this. Thank you, Chairman. We're off to a good start. Thank you, Chairman Breezy, and good afternoon, fellow senators of the Executive Board. I'm Senator Tom Brewer. For the record, that is T-O-M-B-R-E-W-E-R. I represent 11 counties of the 43rd Legislative District of Western Nebraska, and I'm here today to introduce LB 254. I'm introducing this bill on behalf of everybody who's interested in the legislature. This bill, or the idea of this bill, was brought to me when I first came in 2017. Last year, we were able to have the bill, make it all the way through this committee, and ran out of time on the floor. So what I'm asking you to do here is remember the idea behind it. It is to take and give transparency to what we do here. And I'm asking a special ask on that because of all the folks who can't get here to be the second house. We live in a world where folks are working multiple jobs, and it is physically, in many cases, impossible to come here and be a part of that second house. What the video archive does is essentially a library where they can come in, they can see committee hearings, to listen and see at the time of their availability to what has happened, and then to also hear the floor debate on bills. The idea of having a unicameral and the second house of the people, I think, is weakened when we don't give them the ability to see what we do. And so what I'm asking with LB 254 is that we have a archive library available that people can come and use to see and hear what we do in the body. So with that, I'll be open to take questions.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. Any questions? I see Senator Geist.
I love this bill. Full transparency, I brought it my first year. And so I'm so glad that
You're a
this-
genius.
Yeah, well, I won't comment on that, but I do believe that this serves the people of Nebraska. And I think the fiscal note even says it's envisioned that the requirement for video possesses the possibility that there will be higher use on the website. And so they're going to have to beef up the website a bit because they expect more people to watch. And I think that's part of why we're here, is to serve the public and their interests. I do think this fiscal note might be a little high. We already do some closed captioning, and this just adds to that. And I'm no technical expert, but I think that might be a little exaggerated. But anyway, I appreciate you bringing the bill, and I think it serves the people of the state very well.
Well, thank you on that question, and you're right. And I think there needs to be a look at the Nebraska public media, what we're paying in currently for that. And if we add this tasker, is that fiscal note reasonable? Because I think that
We're not starting from zero.
right. And
We already have some of that.
one of the things that was brought up by folks that are very interested in this is that we take bills and we put maybe as the first part of the bill. So instead of LB 001, where we actually have the legislative, so the 108, because what happens, you get confused because what 336 was last year is something different this year, and trying to get everything lined up so you understand it. So if we put the session and then the LB number, then they know that, you know, what biennium it was in, and they could look it up and get the correct bill. So there'll be some things that we have to work through to figure out what this library looks like, but the ability to recall, and I think for us, in many cases, we have bills that someone else has presented, and when you're getting ready to present that same bill, think of how handy it would be to be able to go back and look at those talking points and who testified and better understand it coming in. And for the freshman centers, they might be able to look at some of the stuff that's radioactive they should have never touched and not take bills that they end up getting beat up on because they didn't know what they're getting into.
Very good, Colonel. Thank you, Senator. Senator Arch.
Thank you, Senator Brewer. So my understanding is that the official record of the legislature will remain the transcript,
Correct.
correct? So this video doesn't replace that. Okay. So I think I just want your personal thoughts. One of the questions that if we move this forward, it is going to be this issue of how long do you archive? I mean, we know that these are large files. I mean, as far as storage space, large files, and we have a lot of video each year. How long, I mean, do you see this like forever stored? Do you see at some point the video drops because we have the official transcript? And I guess it kind of goes to the question of the purpose of the video to begin with. But at any rate, all or none or any of those questions.
Well, there's a few to unpackage there. All right, the cycle that or the length that we keep them, you know, it's hard to say because I remember when I first deployed to Afghanistan, we took everything we had and had to have about 6 hard drives to put them on. By the time I left, we had them all on one multi-terabyte drive because of how technology changed over 10 years. I would hope technology continues to change like that, and that we would be able to keep from the time that we start recording them forward. And if technology is what I think it will be, I think it will then be a historical record we come back to look at bills or testimony. So, and I got to remind you that this bill had a speaker priority last year. Just no pressure there, but I just thought I'd share that with you.
Thank you, Colonel, and thank you, Speaker Arch. Senator Clements.
Thank you, Chairman Breesy. Thank you, Senator Brewer. How many other states do this now, the public access to video?
Well, that's a good question. Because Tony doesn't have enough work, I put him to work on this. And we didn't find a state that didn't have some capabilities. As a matter of fact, I even went and looked, the Lakota Sioux Tribes Indian Council meetings are archived. Now they're through YouTube, which obviously is a lot cheaper than what we're trying to do here. But, you know, I think we're kind of into the line of folks that have made this an issue to address, because it looks like, you know, at a lot of levels of government, they've decided that need to be able to see what's happened and then go back and have it available to folks so that when you come home from work in the evening, and we've been busy doing stuff during the day, if you could go and look at the exec board and whatever bill, you could pluck it out, see it, and be done with it. And you're not driving 10 hours round trip to Lincoln and standing down work and everything else. And so I think it actually gives us a second house that to a degree has been unavailable to be a part of our system here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Any other questions? Senator Engler.
Yeah, would this cover committee hearings as well?
Did I say
Aside
good
from
enough?
exec? would this include committee hearings?
Yes, the plan is that it would include hearings, because the thought process was that if you don't understand how the bills get to the floor and what was talked about in that committee debate, it's hard to then really understand the floor debate and the issues. And so the two are really kind of a package.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Aguilar. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Senator Brewer. First proponent testifier. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Nicole Fox, NICOLEFOX, Director of Government Relations for the Platt Institute. And thank you for the opportunity to testify today in support of Senator Brewer's LB 254. While we have a plethora of media outlets in Nebraska, there are still gaps to fill in providing coverage about policy issues that impact Nebraskans. One of the fundamental principles of good governance is openness and transparency. Citizens need and deserve access to the information about policy decisions being made and impacting their lives. Having an informed and engaged public is important. It's important so that voters can hold their elected officials accountable. In the last decade, technology and the internet have opened access to the legislative process and created new ways for citizens to interact with their elected officials. Legislative documents are created, tracked, and transmitted electronically, and an unprecedented amount of information is being made available to the public online. This transition has made legislative work more efficient and has enhanced transparency, accountability, and access. Live webcasts of legislative floor proceedings are available in all 50 states. Also, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. 24 states and the District of Columbia also broadcast legislative proceedings on television, and Nebraska is one of those 24 states. And Senator Clements, to your question, 46 states plus the District of Columbia, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands archive legislative proceedings in audio and or video format. And on your handout, I do have a website that you can look at to access all of the states and then their individual archives. The 4 states that do not archive legislative proceedings include Alabama, Illinois, Nebraska, and Pennsylvania. Legislative archives can be found primarily on states' corresponding legislative websites, but also on YouTube, as is the case with Nebraska's neighboring states, Kansas, South Dakota, and Wyoming. The Platt Institute has a longstanding interest in government transparency, and LB 254 represents a significant legislative priority for us as we work to implement the recommendations of Blueprint Nebraska. The Platt Institute appreciates the great work done by Nebraska Public Media to provide access to real-time live coverage of Nebraska's legislative proceedings, but many Nebraskans are unable to watch floor debate or hearings live because they occur during working hours. And without access to coverage, one must depend on secondhand accounts. And sometimes these secondhand accounts may only be short snippets, they may contain biases, and they may not truly reflect the true context of the issue that is being heard or debated. With simultaneously occurring committee hearings, it's not uncommon for us at the Platt Institute to have bills of interest being heard on the same day and time, and I'm sure that is true for many other Nebraska organizations and citizens. While transcripts of floor debate and legislative hearings are made available to the public, it can be some time before official transcripts become available, and when they do, they are not always easy to find. Also, a recorded yay or nay vote is not always taken on major legislative proposals. And the ability to view a video recording might be the only means of ascertaining how or why policy decisions were being made.
I'm going to have to cut you off
Yep.
there, but.
And so with that, I conclude my testimony. Thanks for the opportunity. I was almost done.
You bet you were. We have your written testimony here. I appreciate that. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent testifier, please.
Hello, good afternoon.
Hi, welcome.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Guadalupe Esquivel, GUADALUPE and I'm here speaking on behalf of the Nebraska Civic Engagement Table in strong support of LB 254. This is a straightforward, common sense approach. And to uplift the Platt Institute's earlier point, this is already in use officially in some way by 46 states. At the Nebraska table, we work with our 501c3 nonprofit member organizations across the state to increase civic participation. And something that we hear time and time again from community members is that inaccessibility and lack of transparency in government can be one of the biggest barriers that Nebraskans face that prevents them from being informed and engaged in policy decisions that impact every part of their lives. This gap in access is a frequently asked about community need, and a video archive would facilitate further engagement and bolster education about the legislative session. This is also an incredibly helpful tool for nonprofits like ours who connect community members with resources to stay engaged during the session. This step to create a video record would allow for a greater number of people to be able to view legislative hearings at any time that works best for them and to better understand the policy decisions being made. And of course, to ensure that Nebraska is up to date on best practices. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Thank you for your
Thank you.
testimony. Next proponent testifier, please.
Good afternoon.
Yes, welcome.
Chairman Breezy and members of the executive board, my name is Michael Lauber, Mikel Lauber. I'm the director of news at 1011 in Lincoln, and I'm speaking on behalf of Media of Nebraska, which represents the state's newspapers, broadcast media, and associated digital outlets. I'm here to speak in support of LB 254. Media of Nebraska's primary role is to advocate for access to information, not just for the news media, but for the general public. We're excited to support a bill that would greatly enhance access to the important public work you do here every day. As you know, the work you do here is already accessible to the public for those who are able to attend hearings and watch live streams through Nebraska Public Media or read coverage that the news media provides. But of course, not everyone is able to attend or follow sessions live. And while my colleagues in the media provide coverage of many of the sessions in the legislature, the volume of work you do here means it's impossible to cover it all. A publicly accessible and captioned video archive of legislative and committee hearings would be an important resource for the people you serve. It would allow your constituents to follow the issues that are most important to them whenever and wherever they're available. It would provide historical context that could be referenced and researched for years to come, and it would be a tool for journalists in the Nebraska news media who may want to view or review debates and hearings to better inform their reporting. The inscription above the main entrance to this building reads, "The salvation of the state is the watchfulness of the citizen." This bill would enhance that watchfulness and lead to better government as a result. That's all I have. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you, Senator Breezy and members of the executive board. My name is Heidi Ewing, Heidiuhing, and I'm the public policy director at Civic Nebraska, here to testify in support of Senator Brewer's LB 254. A critical component of a robust democracy is the public civic engagement, which is the responsibility of each individual. But government entities need to meet the public halfway by making this engagement as convenient as possible. We see this bill as providing a very important means for people to engage with our legislature while recognizing that even those who are very interested in what happens here have busy lives that prevent them from watching live or being here in person. The fact that groups have taken the initiative to provide this service for themselves since it was unavailable says a lot about how strong the demand for this footage really is. I wouldn't expect that many people would watch all of this footage gavel to gavel, plus all of the committee hearings every day, but the archive will enable clips of our legislative footage to be used in civic education efforts, in schools, by the media, and by advocacy organizations to educate people about particular issues and the legislative process. All of these efforts are not for profit. The fact is that what you do here is interesting to people, and it's an appropriate courtesy to the public to make viewing it accessible. Nebraska was one of the first states in the country to offer live, gavel-to-gavel coverage, reflecting the unicameral's longstanding commitment to transparency. Now we're one of the last states to offer this archive for your constituents, and that seems like an important omission to resolve. Most of the work is already done. The cameras are here and updated to the best quality possible. Nebraska Public Media has staff in the building managing these feeds. The video is broadcast already, live and recorded. That's a lot of work done for nothing to show for it. This is taking that service and that investment to its logical conclusion, making it exponentially more useful over time. We're especially interested in the fiscal note's mention of the intent to archive additional years of historical footage that's available. Adding as many years as possible to that archive would make it more immediately useful. So we're also in support of that. And we'd encourage that the search capability reflect the categories currently available on nebraskalegislature.gov, which is the bill number, introducer, committee, session, and keywords, in order to make the archive as useful as possible. Thanks for considering this proposal.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Chairman Breezy, members of the committee, my name is Gavin Geis, that's spelled Gavingeis, and I'm the Executive Director for Common Cause Nebraska. Common Cause is a pro-democracy organization, and as such, we're interested in ways citizens can be better engaged with our legislature. This bill represents that. In preparation for this hearing, I went through and did a review of the many state legislative web pages, looking for key takeaways. What can we learn from what others have done? What can we do better? And what you're being handed out is some of my biggest takeaways from what I saw in those state web pages. First and foremost, accessibility. Many state websites do this well, and many do it poorly. How easy is it to find our archives? Right now, the Nebraska Legislature's website does that very well. You can go straight to the homepage. You see easy that you can click on the proceedings, watch video. Other websites do it poorly. They put it as a small block of text at the bottom of the page. However we do it, I would encourage us to do it in a way that's accessible and transparent, easy to find. On some of these, I've given some examples of states that I think did it well. New Jersey does do it very well, very clear to find the archive and live video. We should just follow that example. Next up, closed captioning. This varies very wildly between states. There is no one method of handling closed captioning. Some of them do it very poorly. Some provide it only on archived video in the far past, not on live video, but also the reverse. Some do it on live and not the archived. I would make sure whatever our policy is, we're consistent in whether that captioning is available on the archive as well as live video. There's also considerations of how we go about that closed captioning. Some states have used artificial intelligence to do it, and some of those programs do a very bad job of translating what actually is being said. Again, no matter how we do it, we just want to make sure we do it in a way that is consistent and in a way that is easily understandable and transcribable for the public. Next topic here, additional video information. Many states include an agenda along with the video, so you can watch the video and see the agenda for that meeting. Some do not, but I would encourage us to look at a system that includes additional documentations from those meetings alongside the video. It just helps the proceedings, helps understanding what's happening in the meeting. Overall, just increases the public's information and knowledge of what's actually going on. Next up is archive organization. As all of these vary wildly among the state, the best examples include multiple ways of sorting and clear organization for how the videos are archived. The worst examples are scattershot, with some committees being organized one way, some floor sessions being organized another way, with no clear methodology of how they're actually organizing it. We just want to make sure that this is done in the most transparent, easily organized way for the public. Next up, retention policy. I'm repeating myself again, but wide variety. Some states, if you look at New York, they go back all the way to 1999 with some very old, very outdated technology, but still decades of retention. Others who have just begun doing this only have a couple years of footage, but it does seem to be the trend that states maintain these videos and audio for as long as they've been keeping them, for as long as they've actually been holding this process. So that may mean for Nebraska, starting now with this, as soon as we implement this and as far back as we could go, but there's no one way to do it. Finally, real quick, there are multiple ways states have gone about doing this. Some have custom websites. Some are using slick media technologies. Many states use that particular system which does have advantages, but it's not the only way. And finally, some use YouTube. I would encourage us not to use YouTube. It is not the best system. It does not work for the advantage of most people. So
Very good.
yes.
Gonna have to shut you off there, but have your written
Completely.
comments here. Appreciate that.
No, thank you.
Any questions? Senator Vargas.
Thank you. So I think what we've heard from a lot of the testifiers is that and we heard this in the past too, that there's a benefit obviously to transparency, which I was speaking for myself. I support that. The question I have is from some of the policy considerations on what you're seeing in other states, have you seen any or can follow up on any information, and I'll ask this for Senator Brewer as a follow-up too, on what consequences. The only concern that I've ever had or we've discussed largely has been the use of video outside of public transparency, outside of it in the public, that would be used for commercial or political reasons. And I know that there's language in here that references, political or commercial reasons, that information, that these videos should not be, or any audio or video would not be used for that reason. But I don't know if you have any information on consequences or reinforcement to make sure that doesn't happen as a sort of an after unintended consequence of putting this out there.
Yes, and to that point, what I can say, I will look more deeply into it, but other states are acknowledging that. On their archives, they are saying this is only for the same purposes that Senator Brewer put in the bill. It is not just Nebraska worried about that, and so it is an important consideration that is added. In terms of how that has impacted other states, I'm not 100% sure. I will look into that, but it's certainly a thing everyone's looking at and worried about.
Yeah, no, I appreciate any information you can do to follow up on that. Would be great.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Anyone else? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next proponent testifier. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Cindy Maxwell Ostick. That's CindyMaxwell-OSTDIEK. And I want to thank Senator Breezy and the executive board for hearing this important legislation and leaving the hearing open for everyone to testify. I am a mom and small business owner and volunteer, and I'm an active member of the Nebraska Legislature Second House. And this particular project and service is something that I have been focused on for quite some time, and I have followed Senator Geist through this process, and thank Senator Brewer so much for bringing the legislation last year and this year. I believe that this Nebraska Public Media Service and the legislative clerk's office, everyone that brings it together does such a good job. And it is important that we continue that process and have it be professional and have it be offered better than we are accomplishing it from outside. There are some of us that have been actually recording and digitizing these proceedings for a few years now, but it's very difficult due to technical issues and time, and sometimes there is committee hearings we missed, floor debates that we weren't able to catch, and the resolution isn't very good on quite a few of these recordings either. So we're right now gathering them on YouTube, putting them onto our website, trying to categorize them, but it is something that we're really wishing that the legislature would take care of as a service to all Nebraskans. Everybody's had such good points, but I do want to say that we are hoping that the categories that we could search, including date, bill number, resolution, committee, introducing senator, keywords, that these recordings also be closed captioned and included on the main page for each bill on the legislature website. So it's easily accessible and it's all together. And that way the citizens and the senators can access it easily. We also would ask that you would go back and include previous recordings. I know that there's some available through Nebraska Public Media for several years, and that there's also many available here through the legislature itself. I am a member of the Nebraska Legislative Study Group, and we currently have from 2020, 175 files saved, 250 from 2021, 365 from 2022, and 130 so far here in 2023. We've been catching all of the committee hearings. We're not able to upload them all quickly enough. And if anyone has questions about a specific one, I'm happy to help. We do want to again thank Senator Brewer and hope that you'll please vote yes and quickly get this implemented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Any other proponent testifiers? Seeing none. Any opposition testimony? Welcome.
Good afternoon. Senator Breezy, members of the Executive Board Committee. My name is Michael Ryan, MICHAELRYAN. I'm here today to testify for and against LB 254, a bill designed by Senator Brewer to intelligently enhance, amplify, define the strategic objectives of Nebraska Educational Telecommunications Commissions and change powers and duties of that organization. I think that we need to understand that NET is a voice and a service provider for the entire state of Nebraska. It's not just 1011 News. It's not just Channel 13. It's this capital acts as a resonation chamber for ideas and for advancements towards the state. With this bill comes the opportunity to look at it a little deeper. I spent over 100 hours now looking at the legislative website, and this bill is spot on. You guys need to do this, and I think it should advance quickly through proceedings. Like there should be no arguments for it. But I think there should be additions. The main addition is I think the content. Like you could be adding more content. I could call 10 or 15 college students right now and say, hey, I need a video clip of 10 or 15 minutes of the state of Nebraska to air on NET. Could you do that for me? And any one of these reputable students could go out there and produce a quality video that could be broadcast. There's a lot of downtime on NET. I see a lot of blue screens. I guess I'm a member of the Second House. I'm not a paid lobbyist to be here. I've watched the legislature, and it needs to be more. There needs to be more available content for us to view. But putting these captions on there could be one problem that I foresaw. In the bill, I did read through it. It says such recordings should not be used for political or commercial purposes. I think that there should be someone just to monitor that. I definitely see like the Herbster coming back and using stuff that you guys say in commercials. So be wary of that. And with this archive, I mean, you got money moving. Like you could easily make a way to have college students or professionals create content that shows Nebraska and shows the good life. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Just one before you leave.
Yes, sir.
You testify in opposition, but you generally support the concept, just needs to be expanded upon and some details worked out.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Yeah,
You just
okay,
need to expand
great.
it out a little bit further. And it's just a great platform. I mean, you have NET. I was sitting at Meadowlark Coffee last night, and there was a Fulbright scholar sitting over here, and there was 2 NET employees sitting over here. So I discussed this bill with them. We read through it, we talked about it, and we agreed like NET just needs an upgrade. Like NET needs an upgrade.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other opposition testifiers? Seeing none. Any neutral testifiers? Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Breezy, members of the Executive Board. My name is Brandon Metzler, BRANDON, METZLER, Clerk of the Nebraska Legislature. I wanted to start first by thanking returning members of the Executive Board, Senator Vargas, Senator Lowe, Senator Slama, and especially Senator Geist. I say that because I have been heavily involved with video since I started in the clerk's office. Even back to 2018 with Senator Geist, LB 1018. Video has been something that our office has dealt with, that the legislature has dealt with, that NET has dealt with, now NPM. So it's certainly something that I'm glad that you guys had the patience. I feel like, and I don't want to speak for NPM, but from conversations and certainly our representations we are in a place with video now that we have not been previously, and we feel comfortable with what you choose to do going forward. And we're, arms open, willing to work to get a product out there that does look, that's both transparent, but also what you want for a professional representation of the legislature. Two things that I want to talk about with this bill quickly, minor things. Going through the bill, I think you need to probably remove political and commercial purposes from the bill, strike that. 2018, there's a court case in California that it ruled that that's unconstitutional. Texas had the exact same situation where somebody tried to use it in a political campaign in Texas. They told them they couldn't. They sued. They won. It's unconstitutional, so you can't use it. It's a First Amendment violation. That being said, and this rolls into another point, it would be good for the exec board to establish a policy of what you want this video to be used for, how you want it to look. This goes heavily into retention, as Speaker Arch noted. There's some questions about retention, and that's where some of this cost is coming from as well. Is if you have an indefinite retention schedule, that cost starts to snowball with the cloud storage. And I can get into details about how we plan to store it and that type of a thing, but that's where our costs are coming from a legislative perspective. Is that we don't have any costs in the first year, but the second year, those storage costs are going to start to add up. But as part of that policy, I think you can add in some language of us. I don't want to say doctoring because it's the wrong word, but we can put some watermarks over the video. We could try to work out some copyright claims, stuff that if somebody were to run it in an attack ad, we could get the video, you don't put it out in 4K HD quality, you put it out, to where if it's legitimately going to be used for educational purposes, an individual can watch it, they can listen, they can get the gist of the committee or the floor debate, but they don't have the means of reproducing it. It's very clear that they took it straight off of our stream. So if they're going to run an attack ad, it's got the legislature seal right over the top of it. It's very blatant. The only other thing I will add is there were some concerns about the transcript being certified by the clerk. So right now in legal proceedings, the clerk signs off on this was the official transcript. This is what was said on the floor. I have very serious considerations for a clerk going forward that would have to sign off on legislative video. Because of the advancements in AI and deep fakes and some of that technology, I think 20, 30 years from now, you may put the legislature in a position where they're signing off and certifying video that could have been altered without their knowledge. At least with the transcripts, it's an internal process. We know that we created it, we signed off on it, and that's what would be used in a court. So that's my concern from I would just like to see language added that said video does not need, will not be certified. Only the transcript will be certified for legal proceedings. If I've got just a second, I would like to speak to the idea of many other states having done this, and I don't disagree. There certainly are a lot of states at this point. We are to some degree behind the curve on this, and I would like to see us get ahead of it. But the only other thing you have to remember, and this goes to storage too, is you all have a lot of hearings and you're going to generate a lot of data. Some of those other states, some of those other levels of government, the local ones, they don't meet to the level that you guys do with, 5 hearings going on at a time plus floor debate. You're going to generate a lot of data. And so everything that they film, they may have one hearing a week, and it's a joint hearing and it's one big production, whereas we are putting together, daily 5 different streams. And I want to speak to NPM's costs. Again, don't want to speak for them, but I wanted to say my understanding is where their costs are coming from, especially up front, is Senator Geist, you're exactly right. We are far along in our video capturing capabilities. The problem is when you get to that closed caption perspective and when requests are going to be made from an ADA perspective, we certainly need to have closed captioning on those. And we don't have that ability within the hearing rooms. So part of that cost from NPM's perspective is going to be getting the hearing rooms up to the ability, they're called encoders. Basically, they'll take the stream and it will close caption it so that our floor debate right now is closed captioned automatically. Not automatically, NPM has a process that they could certainly give you more information about. They used to go to a Kansas company to actually type it out. Anyways, that's where that cost from NPM comes from, is that initial getting the hearing room set up, ready for closed captioning. I don't know where I'm at with time, so I'll certainly take a step back and answer any questions.
Very good, thank you. Any questions, Senator
I
Geis?
do. So the closed captioning cost would be a one-time cost, or is that an I mean, I know, of course, the bulk of it won't be ongoing, but is there an ongoing charge to use that closed captioning year after year after year?
That's more of an NPM question. I will tell you the bulk, as you saw in the fiscal note, will be that upfront getting the hearing rooms caught up. There may be some costs with closed captioning on a day-to-day basis. There's also some costs with their processing. I know part of the other thing, again, I apologize because NPM is here and for questions and whatnot, but the other part is the other part of NPM's upfront costs are going to be their processing power. Right now, they've got a little bit, they want to update their processing power because when you ask us for a hearing right now, some of those ones that go late into the night, those are bigger data files. We're not turning those around necessarily right at 8 o'clock. So when you walk in the door, we want to have that video available on the website in this case, or as it is now, available for distribution. So NPM's costs are both equipping the hearing rooms and their processing power. So they get us the video faster, ready to be uploaded, and their ongoing costs. Again, they could speak to this, but it's the ongoing maintenance of both the closed captioning and their processing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Geis. Anyone else? Senator Vargas.
Can you speak a little bit to, you mentioned the AI component, and we've had some bills in judiciary in the past just talking about public entities and video recordings and who owns the data. How are other states going about, other state legislative houses that have this going about navigating that in the long term? You mentioned the deep fakes, which are all real things to be concerned about. So,
Senator, I think because those are so much still in their infancy, I mean, you're starting to see the chat bots and stuff that can generate the AI. I don't know that anybody's ever approached that to this degree. They put the video out and you're absolutely right in that we are generating, you all are generating hours and hours and hours of your voice, your picture, for some of that stuff to where I don't know that we can doctor the voice component. That's why I said that if we had the ability and you through policy allow us to at least put something over the video that it's, could clearly show that it was distorted, like a watermark that covers the whole video. That allows that if somebody were to have distorted the video, they'd also have to have copied that watermark. You may see distortions in the watermark. I don't know that states have really tackled that yet, but I also don't know that they've seen clear violation, that type of activity going on yet.
I mean, I'm less concerned for us. We're already public figures, so that's neither here nor there. It's more people coming in hearings. I think people are prepared that when they're here, they're testifying, what they say is in the transcript, it's on the public record. I think they're also prepared because they're giving their address, there's information, that's all public. But in preparation that their likeness and the digital code that is who they are and in terms of visual is also now up in the public and can be utilized by companies. I just don't know that component for the public.
Absolutely.
For people that are coming and testifying in hearings and things of that sort.
Absolutely. I understand those concerns.
Thank you, Senator Vargas. Anyone else? Speaker Arch.
Thank you. This may not be your question. It may be actually for Senator Brewer, but the items to be recorded, it says including all floor debate and public committee hearings. Do you understand that to mean excluding executive sessions of committees?
Correct. To me, it would be anything that's put on a hearing schedule, not exec sessions, not briefings, unless they are put on a hearing schedule, as sometimes they are, or recorded by NPM. Those listening sessions that Judiciary Committee carried out a couple years ago, those were specifically requested to be recorded and transcribed. Though I think, again, this could be something perfect for a policy from the executive board, but I think if you outlined, it would be essentially, from my perspective, this would be anything that ends up on a hearing schedule. Floor debate, any of the committees that are on the hearing schedule, no exec board or no exec sessions, no, anything like that.
Thank you, Speaker. Senator Clements, did you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman Brewer. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I've been very interested in this topic since I came to the legislature. I got some transcript of March of 2017 where I was interviewing questioning the clerk at that time, and felt like we didn't get much cooperation. January of 2018, 22 of us senators signed a letter to the executive board asking for the videos to be available. My question to you first is, we have prior video debate. Do you see that we could also make that available, that not just going forward, but access the prior videos?
Senator, I don't want to speak. I mean, part of what we're doing is we would be hiring a video person that would handle the archives and going forward. The video or the bill requires 2025 or sooner. We certainly have some of that, some of that old video, and I'm not opposed to going back and putting that in. But I think the system that we will develop from a technology standpoint will archive video going forward. It will match current bill to current video, whereas we would have to do some of that manually. So I'm not telling you we wouldn't. I'm just saying it would probably be a different process and more of this individual going perhaps during the interims or pages that are indexing that properly, because the system will work going forward. Going back would be more of a manual type linkage.
And would the closed captions that been recorded in the past or captured in the past be available? Does that have to be recreated, or is it already stored?
So without boring the board and going into too much detail, we use a process called Trent, which does automatic closed captioning now for committee hearings. That's what a lot of your committee clerks are using. That started in 2019, I believe. I'd have to check for sure, but anything from 2019 has been run through Trent, has captioning. Whether or not we can convert that to a closed captioning file, I will check, but there is captioning out there for floor debate prior. I mean, NET has always captioned floor debate. So those files are out there and available. And we do now have the ability with Trent where if we were going to go back and do some of that old video, we could run them through Trent if they weren't the first time. But again, that would be an interim. That would be more of a manual, time-consuming process of making sure that happens. We can automatically, but it's easier to do it going forward. Going back, not saying it can't be done. It's just both a time and process question.
And why do we need 8 on-premises encoders for closed captioning? Why do we need more of those?
Because again, I don't want to go too far into technology that I'm not, but my understanding is each one of your hearings, you look on your closed circuit TV, each one of those hearings is being captured separately from NPM. So within the room, these microphones that you're talking into, that feed's going to NPM as a separate file for each hearing room. So each hearing room will need that encoder to take in the microphone sound, process it, closed caption it, and upload it along with their separate streams. The floor debate's one thing because you're all 49 in the same room. When you're spread out across multiple hearing rooms, each hearing room needs to be able to have that process of taking what's said on the microphone and fed through the encoder.
And finally, I think I know the answer, but I wanted to ask you, who is the owner of these videos? Is NPM or the Legislative Council?
Excellent question. This is also something I would suggest the exec board look seriously at in a policy. NPM has always made the representations that the legislature is the owner of the video. We have some old agreements between NPM and the legislature that state as much, but nothing has ever been seriously in writing, no contract signed. NPM has been extremely gracious with their time, talent, and abilities. And we're very grateful for them. But that's certainly something that the exec board could look at is getting that finality of, we own the video. Again, we've never claimed a copyright on it. Could we? I don't know. But there's certainly that option out there of you guys defining exactly what the ownership looks like of that video.
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Senator Lowell.
Thank you. I'd like to dovetail off of Senator Archer's question about committee hearings and floor debate. We have, sometimes we have interim committee hearings off premises. We're just talking about on premise here.
Correct. Yes. Yes, I will. I'll say yes. For example, the judiciary, that would be a decision for you all to make. In those judiciary listening sessions, they were filmed by NPM. They were transcribed. That wouldn't be that hard to convert to this video database. You would probably need to build a link it with. I think that's a concern. But for interim hearings, if they're not broadcast by NPM and they're not transcribed, it would have to be out of this realm because we don't have those capabilities without any of the technology that are actually, grabbing what's said at those interim hearings.
Thank you.
Senator Lowell. Senator Clements.
One more thought. Where do you plan to store all this video? Is it going to be on the cloud with Amazon, or we have a new server in the building?
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator. That's another thing with our costs. I mean, we're going to have, so this would be an exec board decision. This goes to retention. How much do you want to retain? If you want to retain everything, that looks different than if you want to retain just this week's hearings, just this year's hearings, just this biennium. The thought as of now is we would have on-prem storage of the biennium. So this year and next year, say it was 25, 26, and then everything else would go to cloud storage. The reasoning is you've got, the thing that you have to consider is you've got both the storage and the retrieval costs. So when to put it somewhere costs something, and for somebody to go and get it costs something. So the more you can put into that cloud storage and nobody goes to get it, video from last week, video from 10 years ago, however you decide what your retention schedule looks like. When you put it in that cloud storage, it costs you to store it, but it also costs somebody to go pull it. So that's part of us beefing up our current on-prem storage with this bill, is that if something were to happen where five years ago something becomes relevant now and people are going to pull that video, we can quickly move it from cloud storage to on-prem storage so that when people are going to get it, it's right in our house and they're not pulling it from Amazon cloud storage. And Amazon cloud storage is where we store a vast majority of our data in the cloud. So that's where this video would be had. But that's where the cost comes from, is we need a place to be able to put stuff that is, we didn't see coming, that suddenly becomes a hot topic that was 5 years ago, and people aren't pulling it out of the cloud, raising our costs quickly. It's on-prem, it's cheaper that way.
Good. Glad you've considered that. That sounds like
Absolutely.
a good process. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Clements. Anyone else? Seeing no other questions, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Any other neutral testifiers? Seeing none, Senator Brewer, you're welcome to close.
All right. First off, big thanks to Brandon. He understands it and understands the issues, and that's refreshing because we want to make sure that we look at the issues and don't figure out something later that we should have been on top of. Obviously, in order to make sure that it is constitutionally sound, we need to spend some time with him, get an amendment that corrects the errors that he identified. Just kind of run around the room. I did not ever intend for the execs to be on there. If the light's not on and we're not recording, then that would not be a part of it. Senator Clements, thanks for pointing that out on ownership. I assumed that, and I shouldn't do that. Senator Vargas, I understand what you're saying. As far as concern when we take pictures or video of someone, but I guess my thought was that if you come into a public building, into a public hearing where you already got cameras and everything going just from whatever news station or photographer, you put yourself in an environment where you have chose to come and present your image. And, I think there's some individual accountability there. If you don't want that, then don't put yourself in that position. And as far as, things being used, if there is a controversial bill, somebody is recording it somewhere. And if you get up and you behave in a way you shouldn't, or say things you shouldn't, I think maybe we should be accountable for that. And so that was kind of the thought process I had. That's some of the questions I tried to catch on the roundabout here. So I'll open for any other questions.
Thanks, Senator Brewer. Any other questions? Speaker Arch.
It's not so much a question, but I know that when Brandon was here, he talked about the need to establish kind of a parallel policy by the exec board. I think as you're working on some amendments with Brandon, I think maybe some suggestions as to the elements of that kind of a policy for implementing this, if it goes through, that would be helpful.
Thank you. We will do that.
Thank you, Speaker Arch.
Yeah.
Senator Vargas.
Appreciate you, Senator Brewer. And for clarification, I think you're right. People coming in here have the full expectation that their voice and what they say, that's for the public record. It's more in just this new age of data and the data points of people's faces. And this is a new problem. It's a very, very new problem. And nobody's clearly figured this out in state government. And I think it's more of a transparency for the public also hearing that in addition to what you say, which has always been public in some way, shape, or form, it's the data and the AI that comes from your face and facial recognition, which would now be available for people. So it's just a new problem that we're running, not a problem. It's a new area of policy that people have been handling in the private space. They've been dealing with it in public and law enforcement space. And I just want to make sure it's something that we're aware of in the long term. And just my one question I have for you is, and this is sort of to Senator Clements and our work on appropriations, my hope is we really evaluate the actual long-term cost of this, cloud data storage, and if we're talking about doing this for a long time and for every single hearing, and I want to make sure we're really accurately considering the long-term cost of it. And I don't know if you want to react to that. I have questions on that. But
Well, no, actually, I think you got a good point. And it wasn't until Brandon sat down and started talking through, I thought, you know what? Any other legislature in the country, they're going to cherry pick certain bills that are going to get it moved forward. And they're going to have hearings on those. But it ain't going to be 5 simultaneous ones going morning and afternoon, multiple days. So now all of a sudden you can start see, and some of these go really, really long and lots of testifiers. And so again, he was spot on in picking that out because that is something that we have to consider, or else we're going to dive in and maybe be a little deeper in the pool than we thought we were. No, I think it's a great point.
If any consolation, like even with our online comments, it's with the intent of having more transparent, more people coming in, and we've gotten some letters and emails saying that it wasn't working properly for everybody. And if we're going to spend the resources and the money, I want to make sure it works for people. So
agreed,
we don't have customer service, public service, customer service problems for individuals. So
I guess if I could ask, one issue is that we had one person in opposition who asked for the bill to be moved forward. I hate that we have a situation where someone is in opposition, but they're not in opposition, because that goes into the official record as someone who opposes the bill who's asking to go forward. In my opinion, that's more of a neutral testimony than an opposition, because moving the bill forward is a positive action. And I just wanted to share that, and I appreciate you pointing that out.
Thank you. Senator Brewer, any other questions? Seeing no other questions, thank you for joining us here.
Thank you.
And we did have 36 letters in support, 0 letters in opposition. And that will close the hearing on LB 254 today, and that will close our hearings for today.